Hello everyone. Today here we have Dr. Rahul Prasanna Misra, a renowned chemical engineer and researcher of MIT. His groundbreaking research on molecular chemistry, which I must say are Nobel Prize material, has gained a myriad of plaudits. Hello Dr. Misra. Thank you so much for coming.
Hi, Urja. Thanks for inviting me to this platform. It's a great pleasure. I must admit that I'm still early in my career as a scientist, and so I guess it's going to take some time before my research would be worthy of a Nobel Prize, but I'm really glad to be here.
You're very humble. So to start off, Dr. Misra, how did you get inspired to join the field of chemical engineering?
Right. So for your audience, let me give some brief background on my academic trajectory. I did my high school in India, and when I was doing my high school, I always used to get intrigued by the way molecules move around and they interact and react. And so I was always fascinated by the fact that everything around us is composed of atoms and molecules, and based on how they interact, they create everything that we see around us. And so that really inspired me to do something concerning molecules and atoms, and that's how I went into doing chemical engineering as my bachelor's subject when I did my BTech in Indian Institute of Technology, Kharagpur in India. And right around that time, I also got to know that chemical engineering is not just about chemistry and molecules. It's actually much more broad. Like it's a field of engineering which also takes into account, other sub-disciplines like physics, chemistry, mathematics, and also brings about some engineering aspects like how to engineer molecules to achieve chemical separations. And chemical engineers work in a variety of areas, starting from oil and gas to chemical companies like in distillation columns, and then you also have other aspects like pharmaceutical industries and automotive industries. So this area is really broad, and that really inspired me to pursue this as my profession.
That's quite an interesting start. And I like your definition of chemical engineering. I'm in my freshman year of high school, so I haven't really done much chemistry yet. But from your definition, I've already got quite an interest on that subject. And speaking about your professional career, can you describe the general aspects of your daily professional routine?
Right. So currently, I'm a postdoctoral associate in the Department of Chemical Engineering at MIT. Prior to that, I defended my PhD thesis in chemical engineering last year, August of last year. And I decided to do a postdoc with my PhD advisor to further publish some of the research that I had done during my PhD, working in sync with our experimental collaborators at MIT and elsewhere. So currently, my research concerns carrying out computer simulations and theory of how water molecules and salt ions interact at solid water interfaces. And it has, so although my research is very fundamental because we look at the interactions happening at the molecular level, but it has a lot of applications. For example, the fundamental research we are carrying out has applications in designing better membranes for seawater desalination. So we know that around the world there is a huge water crisis going on, and we know that several parts of the globe would not have access to clean water. And in that case, one potential area where our fundamental research can make a huge impact is seawater desalination, where we pass seawater, which we know is very saline and it has a very high salt concentration. We pass it through a membrane, and this membrane can sieve salt ions. So it does not allow salt ions to pass through it, but it only allows water molecules to pass through the membrane, in which case we can have a complete separation of salt ions from seawater, and we can have only pure water as output going out of the membrane. And so this is one aspect, one applied aspect of our fundamental research. There are other applications like energy storage in batteries and supercapacitors. The batteries we use are mostly lithium-ion batteries, so a better fundamental understanding of how lithium ions intercalate into electrode materials would really advance next generation design of electrode materials for batteries and supercapacitors. And finally, the fundamental research we do also has applications in biology. In our body, there are specific water and ion channels which allow selective transport of water and salt ions, for example, aquaporins. And in all these aspects, the research that we are carrying out has a huge impact.
Well, your research is quite complex, and no doubt it's very revolutionizing. It could really help people all across the globe get free access to good water. And you mentioned how you did a lot of this research last year, so during the pandemic. And would you say the pandemic has impacted your work in any way?
Yes, like in everyone's lives, I mean, pandemic has made a huge problem, uh, and I mean, there are both direct and indirect aspects to it. An indirect aspect is, for example, we collaborate a lot with our experimental colleagues, both at MIT and in other places, including the Lawrence Livermore National Laboratory. And so there were, we faced challenges in collaborating effectively with them. For example, uh, you know, when there was a lockdown, then their experimental labs were also closed, and so that created a barrier in terms of effectively collaborating with them. And when the labs opened, they were also really in a rush to publish the material that they had worked on, and so that created an additional pressure on me to hurry up in terms of working on the theory and simulation aspect of our work. So these are like indirect aspects, and also like I couldn't go back to India to be with my parents during the pandemic, so I was mostly by myself here. Uh, so so it definitely created a lot of issues. So all these aspects are not they're not something in our hand, so we just have to deal with it as they come.
Well, you certainly have had the pandemic impact your work. I hope your advisor is feeling better. But it's amazing how you have still continued to do your research so well among all these setbacks. And speaking of setbacks, generally, how do you approach roadblocks?
I think in research, we have to be we have to take setbacks as they come, because research is not like coursework that we do in high school or in our bachelor's, where we prepare well for an exam and we feel confident that no matter what the questions are, would be able to do well in the exam. Research is not like that, and even if we put a lot of hard work and a lot of perseverance in the kind of work that we do, certain times will not be able to achieve what we desire. And so research, so setbacks, I think, is very common in research, and the way to deal with it is to think of a setback not as a failure but as a stepping stone for further success. Like in each setback, we definitely learn something new, and so we need to take the positive aspect of it and use it in our future research. That's the way I look at setbacks.
I think that's a very important point you make. A lot of times, everyone has heard to take their failures as good aspects of life. But without an example, people really don't take this advice to heart. Only when we look at examples of successful people like you do we really learn the value of setbacks and how people can grow from them. And to add on to your research, research undoubtedly is a never ending, tricky path. But what would you say is the biggest satisfaction that you get out of researching?
I think the kind of research I do, I carry out computer simulations and theory in terms of how molecules interact. So just looking at my computer screen where I can see molecules approaching each other and interacting, that gives me a lot of that's a lot of fun and a lot of satisfaction. I think finally, when we develop a theory and carry out the computer simulations and we compare our theoretical results to experiments and we find that theory and experiments give a good match, that's when we are most satisfied, that we really know how the molecules are interacting, and what the processes are occurring at the nanoscopic level. And that gives me a lot of satisfaction when I am ultimately able to benchmark my theory and simulations and compare them with experiments.
Yeah, of course, your hard work really can lead to a lot of success. And for all of this, you no doubt need a lot of motivation. And as a high schooler right now, I commonly find myself demotivated. For example, getting a lot of homework that's due the next day, or getting a not so good grade on a test. And throughout your journey, you have overcome a lot of setbacks to reach where you are. And how did you draw motivation?
Like I said before, I think I accepted setbacks as they come, and I try to always be in a place doing something which I really love, and in that way I'm able to, uh, I think, be more successful, because if you're doing something which you really love, you do not treat that as kind of work, and so that gives you a lot of satisfaction in terms of what you are doing. And even when you have setbacks, you know that you did your best, and if there are setbacks, you take some positive aspect out of it, which can really help you in the future. So I try to always be in a place doing something which I really love. That's, I think, my mantra for being successful in life.
Yeah, that's an amazing point of advice that you give. People should always follow their passions and do what they love. Because once people do that, success is usually just inevitable. And it's an understatement to say that you are very accomplished. Going both to IIT and then to MIT is a huge accomplishment. It's everyone's dream. And for people in your field, what traits would you say are the quintessence to success?
uh, I think, generally speaking, uh, the kind of research we do, it requires a level of intelligence and smartness to be able to do that. But beyond a certain level of intelligence, I think just intelligence is not able to make the kind of impact that you really want in research. It has to do more with hard work and perseverance in terms of attaining your goals. That's how I feel about it.
Yeah, of course. The combination of intelligence with determination, those are the key traits that everyone needs. Neither one of them on their own are enough. And your career is quite a unique and interesting one. Would you say that your journey has changed your mindset in any way?
Yes, I think so. Before I started my PhD in MIT, I always wanted instant recognition of the efforts that I put in, and I used to be a bit more impatient, so to say. And that's very obvious, right? Because in high school, or even when you are doing bachelor's, you just study for exams, and you get instant recognition. For example, if you study well for a class and you do well, you feel very satisfied. Research is not at all like that. In fact, if you want to do original research, it can take several years. For example, starting from the conception of the idea to developing the experiments, and or developing the theoretical tools to be able to solve that problem, and finally writing a manuscript, submitting it for publication, going over through the peer review system, and then ultimately the paper gets published. And even when the paper gets published, you don't get instant recognition, because uh, you know it needs some time for an experimental tool or a theoretical insight to get to mature enough to be able to get recognition. And so I think my biggest learning has been to stay patient, and to just love the work that you are doing, and to just continue with that.
Yeah,
That's what I've
patience
learned. Yeah.
patience really is a virtue because if you do wait and you keep working hard, the result you get will be so much better than just what you can instantly get out of your work. And research is a perfect example for this because it's a never ending path after all. And what are some of your ideas for future research?
Right. So a lot of the research that I'm currently doing is fundamental. Like, we look at the molecular interactions, uh, by which water molecules and salt ions interact at interfaces. And so a lot of the fundamental research that we are doing has applications for the future. One particular application, like I mentioned during the beginning of our interview, is seawater desalination. So can we design efficient membranes which would be able to sieve salt ions but allow pure water to pass through? And that can have a huge impact in terms of clean energy needs of the world. Other as applied aspects of our research concerns energy storage in batteries and supercapacitors. There is also a biological application of our research, which is to better understand how water molecules and salt ions transport through biological channels like aquaporins. It also has applications in neuroscience, for example, in the way neurons transmit electrical signals. And so all of this are interesting fundamental aspects of our all of these are important applied aspects of our fundamental research. And I'm very excited to see that there are a lot of applications, and hopefully in the future, over a number of years, we can see some of the fundamental science getting translated into applied science.
I find it so interesting how the chemistry that you're researching right now is connected to so many aspects of the world. It's so hard to imagine how everything we're doing right now, from even the computer screen that we're using, is all connected to the chemical research. And you are obviously a very, very busy scholar. I already find it hard to find free time, and I'm just in high school. And in the limited free time you get, what are some hobbies you enjoy doing?
I love listening to music. Before the pandemic, I loved going out for hikes with my friends. Now with the pandemic, when I want to take breaks, I usually go out for long walks, and that also helps me to refresh my mind and think about what challenges lie ahead for my research and how I can circumvent them. So these are some of the hobbies that I have, and try, that's the way I spend most of my leisure time. But it's definitely a challenge to get time during the pandemic, and I think the way I look at it is not to be hard or harsh at ourselves. Just think about the COVID as a challenge and just deal with it the way it comes.
Of course, it's imperative that even among all the work and the busyness in your life, to still have some hobbies, because that's really good for your mental health, and that is the key to succeeding in your professional career. And last but not least, Dr. Misra, what are some tips for aspiring scientists?
I think the greatest tip that I can give is also very simple. Just do whatever you love. Like if someone loves working on math, then they should pursue math. If someone is interested in physical sciences like physics, chemistry, they should pursue that. I really like chemical engineering because it has a bit of both. Like it has a bit of physical sciences, and it also intersects with engineering. To be successful in research, I would say, like I mentioned before in my interview, it's not only intelligence but also perseverance and hard work which ultimately matters. So if you have this as a full package, I'm pretty sure that most people would be able to do well in whatever they do.
That was a very productive interview, Dr. Misra. I certainly have learned so much from this. I've learned to do what I love and to be determined and resilient. And I'm sure the audience has also taken away a lot of tips and has really enjoyed this interview. And I'm looking forward to learning about your new discoveries, which I must say are very interesting and important to the world. You are a very smart scientist, very down-to-earth person, and success is inevitable. Once again, thank you so much for this.
Thank you so much, Urja. Thank you so much for inviting me to this platform. I very much appreciate it. Thank
Of
you.
course.